In this video, we're going to talk about ways of displaying our numbers other than using the number group. The first one is integer. An integer is basically just the whole number. So this function is equal int, and its only argument is what is the number we want to display as an integer. So we will click on A3 and we'll hit enter, and that just shows the integer. Some versions of Excel will have the integer with a decimal and a bunch of zeros. Technically, that is not an integer, but you can remove those zeros by reducing the number of decimals. Okay, the round will actually allow you to round a number to a certain number of decimal places. When a number is rounded, 5 and above gets rounded up. Anything below 5 remains the same. That just depends on what digit you are rounding on. So if I take and type in equal round, so there are two arguments here. The first argument is the number. The second argument is how many digits do I want to show? How many decimal places? So I'm going to show 2 decimal places. So it's going to round to the second decimal place, which is the hundredths. And it's going to look at the thousandths. If that's 5 or above, it's going to round the hundredths up. If it's not, it'll just leave it as the 6. So let's see what happens. There we go, it rounded it up. So if I just copy this down, autofill this down, you can see what does get rounded and how things are rounded. Negatives stay with it. So it looks like most like the row 6, this one right here. I did the second, so it looks at the 5 in the hundredths. That's what I want to round to. And then so it looks at the thousandths, that's 0, that's less than 5, so it will remain as is. It won't round it up. Now sometimes you may want to round things down. If you are looking at a budget, for instance, and that budget is giving you a certain number of backpacks to produce for the week. And let's say your calculations show 516.7 backpacks. Well, you can't make a 7/10 of a backpack. So what you'd want to do is round down to the nearest backpack, or the next example, we could round up to the nearest upper backpack. It just really depends on your budget. So here we're going to do equal round down. It's the second one down, so I can use my arrow key and tab. Again, it's going to want to know the number, which is A3. And I want to just go to, I want a whole number, so I'm just going to have it round down to no decimal places. And I'm going to hit enter, and then I will autofill that down. And you'll notice with the positive numbers, it basically just rounded it down similar to integers. In negative numbers, it rounded it to the next number down. From 79, it became 78. So it's rounding it down. Not its value, it's just rounding it to the next number down. So round up goes the other direction. So again, you decide that there might be a partial backpack, so you're just going to round it up. Say, I want to make the next backpack number of backpacks, so we're going to use round up. And again, we choose the number, and we're going to do 0 decimal places. And so then we'll hit enter, and you'll notice it rounds it up, no matter what the rounding capabilities would be. So for example, if we looked at rounding with the 41.0, if I change this to no decimal places, we move that over a little bit, delete that, make it 0, and you will see that it'll just give us 41. So it doesn't actually do a rounding per se, it just rounds it up or it rounds it down. Now the ABS is absolute value. The absolute value is basically the number of of places, the number of units from 0. So it has no sign. So the function is equal ABS. There is only one argument, that is the number. So we'll click on A3 and I'll hit enter. And notice it did no rounding, and I can copy that down. So it just removes the signs. Now, what if I wanted to round a absolute value number? So in this instance, we will combine two functions. We'll start with equal round, and the number is really going to be this absolute value. So we'll just do, we're not going to pretend this column F isn't there. I'm just going to include the function and the number. I need to close. Notice the tooltip here is telling us that we're currently working with ABS, absolute value. So I'm going to close that. And once I close that, notice it now changes to round. So we're currently working with the number portion of round. So then I will do a comma. And let's say that I just want to see one decimal place. And then I'll close this. And the thing to remember when you are working with multiple functions is for every open parenthesis you have, you need to have a closed parenthesis. So I have two open parentheses, and now I need to have two closed parentheses. Now sometimes Excel will fill those in. Generally, if I'm working with multiple nested functions, I always make sure that I close my parentheses. So I hit enter, and so it took the absolute value and then it rounded to the first value, the tenths place, because I only wanted to see one. I didn't want to use this, I wanted to use the original because I wanted to incorporate two functions. So if we copy this down, and this is rounding, in essence, an absolute value to one place. So in this instance, what we did is we incorporated two functions. The main function was the absolute value of a number. We went to the original, and then we rounded that. So that is different ways of rounding numbers. In many instances, you can just use the increased decimal or the decreased decimal works just as well. The rounding allows you a little more power and quicker power. So that is working with rounding.